It was a chilly autumn morning in Chicago when Mark, a young entrepreneur, found himself staring out the window of his small office. His company, which had once been the center of his dreams, now seemed on the verge of collapse. For months he had been fighting an uphill battle. Financial pressures, missed deadlines, and a constant stream of problems had begun to overwhelm him. The energy that had once filled his workspace, ideas bouncing from one person to another, had faded. The office, once a place of possibility, now felt like a cage. Mark was drained. Mark had always been the type of person who believed in self-reliance. From the very beginning, he prided himself on being independent. He built his business from scratch, and he was determined to prove to himself and the world that he could succeed on his own. "You can do it all," he told himself over and over again. But as the weight of the business grew heavier, so did the isolation he felt. He had pulled away from his friends, avoided family gatherings, and distanced himself from his employees. There was a nagging feeling in his chest that asking for help would make him seem weak, that needing others would somehow be a sign of failure. His phone sat untouched most days, and his emails went unanswered as he buried himself in work. As the problems mounted, so did his loneliness. Then one evening, after yet another long day of staring at financial reports that seemed to have no end, his phone buzzed. It was a text message from Sarah, a former colleague from a startup he had worked at a few years ago. They had kept in touch intermittently, but he hadn't heard from her in a while. "Hey Mark, I know it's been a minute, but I've been thinking about you. I know things have been tough lately, and I just want you to know that I'm here for you. Let's grab coffee soon." The message hit him harder than he expected. It wasn't just a casual check-in. It wasn't some generic, "I hope things are going well." It was a simple, honest reminder that someone cared about him. Someone hadn't forgotten about him despite the way he had shut the world out. Mark stared at the message for several moments, feeling a strange sense of relief mixed with guilt. He had pushed people away for so long, and now, here was someone extending a hand when he needed it most. The next morning, he met Sarah at a small cafe on the corner of his street. The place was cozy, with the scent of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. Sarah greeted him with a warm smile, her presence as comforting as always. She didn't bombard him with questions right away. She simply asked how he was doing, and that was enough. For the first time in months, Mark felt the tension in his shoulders loosen. He didn't have to be perfect in this moment. He didn't have to be the strong, independent entrepreneur. He could simply be himself, vulnerable and unsure, and Sarah would listen. As Mark spoke about his struggles, his fears about the business, the anxiety that kept him awake at night, the sense of failure that seemed to be growing by the day, Sarah didn't interrupt. She didn't try to fix anything. She just listened. She reminded him that everyone faces setbacks, that no one is immune to hardship, and that asking for help was a sign of strength, not weakness. But what truly changed for Mark was the realization that, despite all his fears about leaning on others, he wasn't weak for doing so. In fact, Sarah's support gave him a sense of clarity he hadn't had in months. He wasn't alone. For the first time, he understood the power of positive relationships, not just in providing emotional comfort, but in offering new perspectives, fresh ideas, and, most importantly, the belief that he could move forward. Over the following weeks, Mark made a conscious effort to reconnect. He reached out to his employees who had been working tirelessly on their own, without much communication from him. He spoke to his family, who had grown increasingly concerned about his well-being. And most importantly, he allowed himself to be vulnerable, to admit that he didn't have all the answers, that he couldn't do it alone. This wasn't an overnight transformation. The business didn't turn around on its own. There were still long hours, difficult decisions, and moments when Mark felt like he was right back where he started. But with the support of his team, his family, and friends like Sarah, he felt like he could keep going. He wasn't burdened by the isolation he had once clung to. Instead, he was part of something bigger than himself, something that wasn't built on perfection or endless work, but on connection, trust, and shared purpose. As time went on, Mark's business began to show signs of recovery. But more than that, he started to feel the weight on his shoulders lighten. He realized that success wasn't about doing everything on your own. It was about creating a network of people who believed in you, who supported you when you were down, and who pushed you to become the best version of yourself. These relationships didn't just help him get through tough times, they made him better, stronger, and more resilient. Looking back, Mark realized that his journey wasn't about proving that he could succeed in isolation. It was about realizing that his success, both personally and professionally, would be built on the strength of the relationships he nurtured along the way. Positive relationships were not just a source of comfort. They were a catalyst for growth, resilience, and the ability to navigate life's challenges with a sense of hope and determination. If there's one thing Mark learned from his experience, it's that positive relationships are not a luxury or an afterthought. They are the bedrock of everything meaningful. Whether it's the support of a friend, the guidance of a mentor, or the encouragement of family, these relationships give us the emotional strength to face the ups and downs of life. Too often we think we must be self-sufficient, that reaching out for help is a sign of weakness. But the truth is, it's through our relationships that we find the strength to grow. These connections, when nurtured, provide us with a sense of security, a sense of belonging, and the courage to take on challenges. They remind us that we are not alone, that we are part of something much bigger than ourselves. So, take a moment to reflect on the relationships in your life. Are you nurturing them? Are you taking the time to show those around you that you care? Life can be tough, and sometimes it feels easier to shut ourselves off, to retreat into solitude. But remember that when you open up to others, you are not just sharing your burdens, you are opening yourself to new possibilities, new perspectives, and new sources of strength. The people in your life are not just there to witness your successes, they are there to walk with you through the challenges, to lift you up when you fall, and to help you see the world through a lens of compassion and understanding. Never underestimate the power of positive relationships. They are the ones that will guide you, support you, and help you grow into the best version of yourself.